So I think the first thing is when you're starting with a new company, just don't be afraid to go. Start having business conversations.
Yeah.
And so you've got to work well with others. You can't dictate, you have to collaborate, release the ego and have this constant thirst, because you don't know, nobody knows their true potential.
Because most companies right now are not thinking strategically 2 or 3 years down the road. They're thinking strategically 90 days down the road because they don't know what's going on. All right, so wherever you're at right now, whether you're driving down the road to a prospect, whether you're, in the gym, running on the treadmill and you're thinking about, who am I talking today? What am I going to say? What am I going to ask? Or let's say maybe you're about to pick up the phone to call a potential customer, or maybe you're walking into a boardroom meeting later today to finalize a deal or a contract with what's going on right now, probably finalizing it on Zoom with what's going on right now. So wherever you're at right now, I want you to stop and think about this question. Think about it deeply. Have you ever wondered, so wherever you're at right now, whether you're about to pick up the phone to call a prospect, whether you're driving down the road because you have a sales appointment you're going to, or maybe you're in the gym, like wondering what your day is going to be like with all the people you have to call, or you're walking into a boardroom meeting right now to finalize a deal. But right now, probably doing that on Zoom with what's going on. Have you ever wondered, what does it take to be a top 1% salesperson in your industry? Okay, like what does it take? What do you have to learn? The salesperson who makes all the money. The salesperson who gets any promotion they want. In fact, they turn down promotions they don't like. They have all the respect by management and leadership and everyone in that company. The salesperson who leads by example. Well, my next guest is going to help answer that question for you. So let me give you a small taste of this gentleman's background. He is currently in the trenches like you, day in and day out, and he's a top producer for a mid-cap SaaS company called LivePerson, a leading conversational AI company. He's been a strategic seller of LivePerson since January of 2018. He's helped LivePerson scale from $0 to $11 million plus in ARR bookings in 24 months, in 2 years, closing Fortune 500 level brands like Delta Airlines, Chipotle, Altice, I think I'm pronouncing that right, United Airlines, and others. Now, his sales career spans over 15 years, and he grew from SMB to mid-market to enterprise to strategic accounts, having worked from scrappy startups to large organizations and really everything in between. He, in fact, even talks about he was so broke in his early 20s that he had to jump the New York City subway, is it turnstiles? I don't even know what that is, to currently being a 7-figure annual income earner. He is not a 7-figure salesperson as far as he makes 7 figures in sales. He actually earns 7 figures as a salesperson per year. Big, big difference, my friends. His journey in sales is baked in his foundation as a serious soccer player with professional ambitions in his youth. In fact, he spent a year in Europe with a first division professional club before running to injury issues to becoming a New York City DJ, where he learned how to read the room to becoming a prime intrapreneur. I love it. He's been highlighted on several sales podcasts over the past year, written articles on his journey. Let me welcome you to the show, a 7-figure earner as a salesperson, Mr. Brandon Fluharty.
Hey,
Brandon,
Jeremy. Good.
Right.
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on here, man. I love talking to professional salespeople that are in the trenches, along with all of our listeners who are out there day in and day out, calling leads, having meetings. They know what's going on. They're actually in the sales process right now. They didn't sell something 30 years ago and are still using old school techniques that have no relevance in our day and age. So I'm excited to have you on here. And I love talking to sales professionals because I know if somebody is making 7 figures a year as a sales professional, as a W-2 or 1099, that they have to know skills and techniques that work with human behavior, because there's no way you can make that using traditional selling techniques that actually trigger sales resistance, that go against human behavior. So I love how you've done that. And I want to do this. Let's dive right into your story and really give our listeners maybe a feel for your background and how you've gotten to this point where you are a 7-figure earner as a salesperson working for a company. That's 7 figures in commissions a year you're paid. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how this started for you? Like, how did you learn all these skills?
Yeah, probably like most people in your audience, getting into sales was not a deliberate choice. We all sort of discover sales typically through an entrepreneurial adventure, or it's just sort of a skill set we knew we had in us, and then it sort of came unfolded as we progressed through life. But really, I think you touched upon it a little bit through my athletic background. I find parallels all the time between serious athletes and salespeople.
Tell us a little bit more about that. Like, what are those parallels?
So I think my ultimate vision of a world-class sales team operates a lot like a top world-class professional sports team. Right. You've got psychology coaches, you've got your real coach, you have nutritionists looking after every aspect that makes you whole as an athlete. I think we need to do the same thing as athletes. Or as salespeople. As
sales professionals. I love that. Now, you seem to be really at the top of your game hunting down these Fortune 500 level companies, but that's not always been the case. Like, what does your journey in sales look like in the past?
So when I finished school in my 20s, I followed a passion, which was soccer at the time. So I was pursuing a professional soccer career, and ran into those injury issues, as you talked about at the top of the show. But I didn't want to give up the game completely. So I joined a soccer education startup in Long Island. And I actually sort of cut my entrepreneurial teeth and sales teeth in that first role without even, deliberately getting into sales. I sold essentially customized, personalized training packages for youth soccer players. And I was with that company for about 4 years. And then, eventually made my way from Queens into, Manhattan, in New York. It's a very expensive place. And, developed a new hobby, which was DJing, and figured out very quickly, hey, I can make some money to pay the rent with this. And funny enough, that helped me to also read a room. I developed some really good skills there. And then from there, I started working with a music marketing company that sold customized DJ mixed music for background music, like with the likes of Gucci. So you
started learning how to read the room, and how did that progress to hunting down Fortune 500 companies?
So that led me to a company based in Manhattan, DJ Scratch Music Academy, that was co-founded by J Master J at Run DMC. And they sold music marketing and celebrity DJ solutions. And that really was my first foray into true sales. And then I made a life choice with my wife to move to where she grew up in Sarasota, Florida. She had finished nursing school, and we wanted to make a choice. And that actually put me in a position where, working in a small town, start over again. So I had to get into SMB sales. And I sold local advertising, and just climbed the ranks every few years from there.
So we're going to get into like the skill level it takes to actually get to this level. But in your thoughts, what is your number one sales superpower that you have?
So I think it's being hyper organized.
What does that mean?
So where I am in strategic sales right now is I don't have to go after the quantity like I used to in small, medium-sized business sales, where it's just, it's okay. Cut bait. Every conversation I have with a Fortune 100 level brand, you need to have an impactful conversation. So I need to know who I'm talking with. That requires research. I need to know the problem that I'm fixing. So I want to know we're B2B to C. So if I'm selling a customer experience, I need to be a customer of that brand and know it inside and out. A golden rule for me is know their customer experience better than anyone I speak with or I meet with in a room.
I see.
And so that puts me in a position of trust and credibility. It's actually how I won Delta Airlines, funny enough. And so, for me, it's it's not so much the client facing activity that's important. It's actually what leads up to that client facing activity. This idea of asynchronous selling, and being prepared for each moment, and giving a little bit to that prospect each time that's of value.
Tell us more about this executive memo. I've heard you talk a lot about this on some podcasts. What does that mean?
Yeah. So I'm a big believer that once you get to a certain stage, you need to co-develop with your prospect, because it doesn't become a selling issue so much. Everybody, at least what we're selling with conversational AI, conversational solutions, just making it easier for a brand to communicate with their customers at scale. Everybody can get behind that. Everybody's sold on that. But the challenges with these huge brands is it's a buying problem. It's about how do you navigate, how do you use your champion, your mobilizer to procure and buy a large transformation in the way that every company is unique. So how do you do that? And so it's co-developing, whether it's a memo, a white paper, it's that turns into the proposal. The prospect needs to be involved in that. It's not a one-way street.
So it's you working with the prospect to find problems maybe they didn't think they had. And really basically come up with a solution to solve those problems from your questioning ability then.
And then writing that, narrating that in a way that will be digestible to their executive and leadership.
So what you're saying is that selling is collaborative, not adversarial, us against the customer.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay. Big difference in commissions when you understand that, like Brandon's just talking about us. Selling, if you want to be a top salesperson, if you want to make $250,000 a year, $500,000 a year, $750,000, if you want to make $1 million a year in income as a salesperson, you have to understand that selling is collaborative. It's you working with them to solve problems and do that with your solution. Most salespeople have been taught that it's you against the customer, right? You're learning skills to manipulate them into buying something that you want them to buy so you make a commission and you make more money. Especially in complex selling environment, you're going to get laughed out of the room using those old school techniques. So I love that, Brandon. Now let's go into this a little bit more. You've talked about a few big deals that you've had. How did you get big brands like Delta and Chipotle to really make such a large investment in your company's product? Walk us through that process.
Yeah, so with Delta, like I said, I took the approach as I was spending almost every week on a Delta plane as a customer, as a diamond medallion. And so I approached them when I shortly joined after LivePerson and said, okay, what is the company I want to target first, go after? So I kind of came up with this strategic plan using an open letter. And I wrote to a handful of VPs that I selected that I thought made sense to receive my message. And I basically said, hey, I'm on your plane every time you promote what we sell, again, conversational solutions, messaging, being able to message a brand. You offer messaging to consumers, but I can't message you, Delta, when I need something. I want to change my flight, or I had an issue. And so I scripted this open letter and sent that off as an email with a link to that open letter on Medium, and it was a private link. And then that actually turned them to responding and chasing me instead of me pursuing them.
You focused on problems that maybe they didn't even think or know they had. Whereas most salespeople would have just emailed them their solution and they would have completely ignored it.
Yeah, you've got to lead with them first, and then lead to your problem. Don't lead with your company. Lead with their company and their problem first, and then you'll eventually get to
because they're going to be way more open. So if you're focused more on them and maybe problems that they possibly have, or you're very neutral, you're not assuming they have problems because that's just going to create resistance. But you're basically helping them find problems that maybe they didn't think they had. One thing we all have to understand, like you do, Brandon, is that most of your prospects you talk to on a daily basis don't even know they have a problem. Or maybe they know they have a problem, but maybe they don't know how bad it is. Or maybe they don't understand the consequences of, if they don't do anything, what problems can happen down the road. So we have to learn the right questions to ask at the right time in that conversation. We have to become what are called problem finders. right? Because if we can't ask the right questions at the right time in that conversation, it's impossible for that person that we're talking to understand what their problems really are and really the root cause of the problem, like what caused the problem. And then more importantly, how is the problem affecting them? Okay. If we can't ask the right questions to get them to think that in their mind, it's impossible for them to ever want to have any urgency in solving something they didn't even know existed. Yeah. So I love, and we're going to get into a little bit more of your questioning skills because I know they have to be very, very well for you to be able to make 7 figures a year in commissions. Now, let's go into this. You closed $9 million in business in 2019 for your company, which was 2 times more than the entire region, which had 25 salespeople in it. 2 times more than an entire region that had 25 salespeople in it. Break that down and help our listeners understand how you did that.
Yeah. So the first and foremost thing is it's not always about the external sale, meaning, selling to the prospect. It's also the internal sale, how you get the company rallied behind you to want to participate with you, be a part of your team in winning this massive new logo and opportunity. Yeah. And so you've got to work well with others. You can't dictate, you have to collaborate, again, on that theme of collaboration. Sure. And so getting, superstars and putting them in a position, it's almost like being a quarterback, right? Yeah. It's you're not running every single play and getting those touchdowns. You've got to know when to hand off. You got to know when to throw it into the end zone and get your team behind you. That's the way I look at it. Again, complex sales, strategic sales. That's how you're going to win. The second thing is don't be afraid to be bold. If you've got the data, you've identified those problems. Okay. We put a $500 million proposal in front of a large cable company. Yeah. And ultimately we didn't get that deal, but we're working towards that as a company. We put the company in a position to eventually get there. But right. That is when you escalate yourself up inside the organization and you get the attention of the C-suite when you put that level of proposal.
Yeah, and you're viewed more as a trusted authority.
That's right.
Right, who can solve their problems rather than just another salesperson who's trying to sell them something that they're trying to get rid of. Those exactly. Salespeople become commoditized.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I love that. Now, what do you think is the biggest thing that keeps most salespeople from being great?
Not having a consistent routine and building the right habits. Okay. And it's, it took me, 15 years to get to that 7-figure earner in a year level, right? Yeah. I was doing well before, but certainly this is a new milestone, and I want to maintain this milestone. Just as sure. Once you hit 6 figures, you don't want to ever leave that club. Same thing in the 7 figures club. Yeah. So it just takes habits and rituals. Just again, like an athlete, it's not about just what you do at game time. It's the hard work that you put in the training and practice every day.
Yeah. And, one of my mentors really hammers this home, and he talks about, is training something you did or is training something that you do? Mm-hmm. Training is something that you do if you want to increasing your income as a sales professional. So many salespeople, I read in Forbes, I had an article in there that I published them a while ago. Another article I was reading the same day talks about how the average salesperson in North America spends less than $100 a year on sales training, less than $100. And then they wonder why they're not making as much money as they want to, because they're not training, they're not learning new skills to get them to a high level. One of the biggest things I say is that 6-figure salespeople, have the biggest ego. So their ego holds them back from learning more advanced skills to get up to $500,000 a year or $700,000 a year income or $1 million a year. And if they would just learn new skills, they could achieve those levels. What are your thoughts on that?
Always be learning, right? It's so funny you say that. I just recently posted something on LinkedIn. It came in my YouTube feed about how LeBron James spends $1.5 million a year on his body, right? He says, you got to keep the number one thing, your number one thing. Meaning for him, all these successful ventures outside of basketball stem from him being a successful basketball player and trying to be at the top of his game forever. He doesn't stop. He doesn't have he has this continual desire and thirst to continue to improve, learn, tweak. And same thing in other industries. Warren Buffett, avid reader, got to continue to, release the ego and have this constant thirst, because you don't know, really nobody knows their true potential. And,
Sure.
and so if you're constantly giving yourself the room to explore, it's really, the ego that gets in the way. So you got to have that constant thirst for knowledge,
and learning.
Improving.
What advice would you give to sellers out there who are looking to break into strategic sales and really reach elite levels, besides just obviously learning more advanced skills?
Yeah, get a coach, someone, an advisor outside. I mean, I worked, last year I worked with 3 different coaches, and I was very tactical. One was sort of like a mental performance coach. One was very, great in just being a sales, execution type of coach. Others were more about, just life enhancement performance, even like athletic performance.
Sure.
So I think, you can't do this alone. You need to surround yourself by people who can make you better. That would be number one. If you're at that level and you're just like, okay, I'm making $250K a year, like how do I go break to the next level?
How do I get to the next plateau? You have to learn more advanced skills, right?
Yeah.
Now, what's one of the most important questions that every salesperson should be asking their prospects?
That's a great one. I think.
What's one of the most important questions you would ask a prospect?
Sure. I ask, what is holding you back right now? And I think that's multidimensional. It's to my prospect, like, what's holding you back in your own career. And I think that can unearth a lot of telling signs of how you can solve with your solution. And then your company, right? Every company has strategic initiatives and North Star goals, so asking those two questions with that dynamic. Personally, what's holding you back to your prospect? What's holding the company back?
What type of psychological powers does that have when you ask a prospect? What does it make them think of? Like, what goes on in their mind?
I think one, it puts them at ease. That hey, this isn't somebody using stale sales tactics.
Yeah. 2,
it's like elevates you on the other side of the Zoom or the phone call, that this person can add value to me.
Sure.
So I think it just puts them in a mindset of, hey, I'm not thinking like what a traditional sales conversation would be. I'm thinking more strategic and high level consultative.
Well, you're asking them questions to get them to question their way of thinking that's allowed the problem to keep occurring, that is preventing them from their or their company's objectives.
That's right.
That's what you're doing, right?
Yep.
So you're getting them to start thinking, and you're almost doing it in I don't want to say a skeptical tone, but you're doing it in a tone where you are open to them. And because you are, they're open to you, right? So when you ask those type of questions, so John, what's holding you back from actually getting to this level, though? What starts to happen with your question ability is it creates a major gap, and that's what you want.
Exactly.
You want them to view your solution or your price tag, the cost of your solution here compared to their objectives up here, this large gap. If they can get the funding for this, your solution, they get to solve the problem and achieve their objectives. If they can't get the funding for your solution, they stay in status quo. And they can't solve their problems, and they can't get to their desired objectives. So when you're able to create that gap where it's so large, it makes your price tag of, let's say, $100,000. If that $100,000 cost can get them an extra $10 million in profit, it makes it look like pennies on the dollar.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, you're exactly right that it doesn't then get down to a discussion around cost. It gets into a validation of value.
Yeah.
And that's what you're constantly striving for, is go for the gap. I like that analogy, like find the gap, go for the gap. That should be a mantra for sales.
You get your prospects to start thinking more about results-based thinking rather than cost-based thinking.
That's right.
Right?
Exactly.
Because if they go with a cheaper product, it might not actually get them the results they want. So it's very risky compared to them viewing your product or your service or your solution, getting them where they want to go. They'll pay more for that if your questioning ability allows them to psychologically sell themselves that you are there to basically help them solve that challenge and get them where they're wanting to go. They'll pay way more for your solution than just another salesperson who's trying to stuff their solution down their throat.
Yeah. You as a strategic seller need to be like a Sherpa. And you hit on it right there is you want them to sell themselves, right? And you're just, again, the more experience you get, the more comfortable you get and confident at that. You know that, if I'm as a Sherpa, I'm helping you to climb Mount Everest, you kind of know what's around the corner. So you get them. And then when they get around that corner, you let them discover for themselves, oh my God, look at the beauty around me, right? It's the first time for them, but many times for you. Yeah,
100%. Now, what are you've made 7 figures a year. You've earned 7 figures a year in commissions. What are some of the top lessons you've learned from doing that, getting to that level?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is when you're starting with a new company, just don't be afraid to go. Start having business conversations. Sometimes sellers like to feel like they need to know the product perfectly. They wait too long. Yeah. Start having those conversations out of the gate. Learn, right, and move and be nimble, and then over time learn to be strategic with your time. And it's okay to start saying no. Right. That was the journey I went, almost over the past 3 years here with a company like LivePerson is, hit the gate running, right? You got to go full force, say yes to everything. And then, second year was more about being strategic, knowing that, okay, this is where I'm going to make the most impact with my pipeline. If I focus on it, the other things I need to say no to.
Yeah, you're focused on income producing activities. So many salespeople get bogged down by things that will help them do nothing as far as making income, as far as making more sales, as far as solving more problems for the companies they're talking to. So every day, every week, you should be focused each day, your schedule, on income producing activities, not BS, if you want to make the type of income we're talking about, right?
That's right. Eliminate the BS as quickly as possible.
100%. Okay, so I want to talk to you about this. What is the reason? Okay, so right now, with everything going on, what is the reason why so many buying decisions are stalling in the marketplace right now? What do you think the number one reason is?
I think sellers can get over anxious, right? When there's a macro event like a pandemic, there's a sense of urgency, and that does stem from the top, right? And, so everybody's feeling the pressure. So I think it's okay to take a step back and be patient as a seller, and know that you've got to have the empathetic approach to know who's on the other side. They're human beings. They're not a target, right? So that's where you got to have open conversations, be transparent, but also, again, be strategic in saying, hey, this is an opportunity. Don't let a good, black swan event, macro event, or, a crisis go unused. So,
well, and I think a lot of it is because most companies right now are not thinking strategically 2 or 3 years down the road. They're thinking strategically 90 days down the road because they don't know what's going on. So we have to be able to ask the right questions that really help them overcome that concern, that risk, right, in their mind about what we're offering. Okay, so let's do this. What do you think? What would be a good question? I love asking our guests this. What would be a good question that a salesperson can ask in that conversation to help build urgency in the sale to prevent that from happening?
So what's going to happen after this pandemic? Are you prepared for that? Tell me what your world looks like after this pandemic ends.
Okay. Why would you ask that question?
Because what you just talked about is getting them beyond thinking about what's happening the next 90 days. It's getting back unless their company is filing for bankruptcy or going out of business, there's always going to be, that subset, but everybody's planning to be resilient and be here. How do you get them to think, to be prepared? Again, use this not as a way to stop innovation or stop building the right foundations for the company. It's about using it as an opportunity to leap forward and move ahead.
Well, you're getting them to view their future state.
Yeah.
Right. So you're getting them to think about their future state once the problem's actually solved. What's it going to do for them? And it's almost like you can even ask questions like, So what are you going to do if the pandemic lasts even longer than what you planned?
Yeah.
And you get them to think outside the box, you know? So like we train a very large insurance company. And when this all started happening, they're freaking out. We don't know what to do. Because all of our salespeople go into the homes. We can only sell in the homes. We can't sell on the phone. It's got to be in the homes. Mm-hmm. And basically we had to transition them to Zoom appointments. Okay. Mm-hmm. And basically I just said, well, we're just going to wait until this gets over in the next couple of months. Because in their mind, in March, they thought it would be 2 months and then everything would be back to normal. And I simply asked, well, what are you going to do if it doesn't go back to normal in 2 or 3 months from now? Mm-hmm. And that got them to think, oh crap, what if it doesn't? We need to prepare like if it doesn't. And that's when we got them on Zoom, taught them how to communicate that way. And their sales went way up just because they had more appointments each day rather than driving around the countryside for 2 or 3 appointments a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, how has COVID-19 affected the way you work?
Yeah. So I was already coming into 2020 with a light pipeline. Literally, my last deal went to the line, a 7-figure deal, bookings deal on December 31st. Yeah. So, I knew that first half of 2020 was going to be light. You add this pandemic and, I was having a great conversation with a hospitality company. They furloughed, many of the people we met with in 2019. Yeah. So that forced me to go deeper with the folks that I did have in my pipeline coming into 2020. So I needed to be, I think, more valuable to them. Yeah. And I wanted to go deeper and spend more time with them. So that was the biggest shift. And the second one, not being on a plane every week and even flying across the country for an hour meeting, that's different behavior. So that, like everybody, we've been a bit more introspective. So it's been more of a focus on deep work, again, more than the superficial work. Okay. So I've really found that, fine tuning my habits, I wear a Whoop, checking my sleep data, how I recover, my health data, even nutrition, how that applies and affects my sales on a day-to-day. That's something I really have picked up.
I love that. What does the future look like for Brandon right
now? So I want to continue to build thought leadership for other sellers. I think it's important, right? That I would have enjoyed having this in my career, somebody who I could look up to and say, hey, he's doing it right now and still willing to help others. I feel like when I was kind of growing up in the sales ranks, like those top producers, there were hidden secrets. You didn't know what they were doing to make them.
They wouldn't share.
Right? Yeah, right. So there was a threat to it. I want to be open and just be transparent. And I invite your users to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best source, Brandon Fluharty on LinkedIn. I do share a lot of content, share some tools. And I want to continue to be a top producer.
Do you have any final thoughts or advice for our listeners?
I think, again, focusing on, staying calm right now is an important thing. And the best way to do that is build a daily routine and build habits. And so, how do you approach each day so that you're not feeling that pressure and reactive to maybe a manager who's saying like, when's that deal going to close? Sure. Or a prospect or a customer who's really riding on you. If you can stay calm, knowing that you've built a foundation for yourself of like, okay, I'm going to approach every day, focused on these core things, then I know I can manage my day effectively.
I love that. Now, you gave us a little bit of your LinkedIn. Let's go over that again because I don't want to get people confused. Where can our listeners learn more about you and your training?
Yeah. So if you go to LinkedIn, Brandon, Brandon, last name Fluharty, Fluharty, just search for me there. And VP of Strategic Account Solutions. I think it's a great way for us to connect. And I put out, it's a focus of mine to put out daily content. It's a part of my routine. And a lot of that content is relative to strategic selling.
Love it. Brandon, can't thank you enough for being on. It was a pleasure. I know what you've talked about today is really going to help salespeople really aspire to be like, hey, this is possible for me. Like if I'm making 100,000 a year or 150 or 250, once I learn the right skills, I can double, triple that, or even more. So I really appreciate your time. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
Now, if you're serious about joining the top 1%, I mean the top 1%, and you want to experience more training content just like this, click the links right over there. Right over there, they're exactly what you need to see next. You see, I release new episodes featuring top salespeople and sales authorities, multiple six-figure, high six-figure, even seven-figure earners every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday every single week at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you're new here, do yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button right below, and join our new Facebook group, Sales Revolution. You see, it's free, and there's a link in the description below just for you. We put it there for you. Finally, I make posts on Facebook and Instagram each and every day with more tips and training, so be sure and follow me and turn on your notifications. So make a comment in the first 7 minutes to any of my latest posts, share this episode, and there's a very real chance that you're gonna win some killer prizes. And here's the thing, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be like everyone else. Get into the game. Join the sales revolution. Stay active, get involved, learn the right skills, and we will show you how to take your life and income to a level that most only dream about. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.